Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to today's broadcast. It's the Friday, May 22nd, 2026 episode of the Marco Dure Show, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. We've got a lot to tackle today on the program, as we do every single Friday before we hit our weekend. Let's get to work first on our news stories relating to the economy first. That way we're all staying very much informed about where we stand. And we'll delve into our market reports momentarily as well. That's very, very crucial we get into that. But I have some very groundbreaking news that just came to right before the show began, and I think I want to talk about this first. And this is out of the California Post. It says that the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has submitted her resignation on Friday, citing her husband's recent cancer diagnoses, stating that she is unfortunately, I must submit my resignation, effective June 30th, 2026. My husband, Abraham, has recently been diagnosed with an extremely rare form of bone cancer. So it seems this is not political in any stretch of the imagination for Tulsi Gabbard. Obviously, it seems like she has her family to worry about instead of this role in the government. And I don't blame her. I really don't. Obviously, a very difficult thing to hear, difficult news to get. So I'm sure this has been very taxing on her. But I'd have to say, Tulsi Gabbard, I believe that she did a decent job running the Director of National Intelligence office. She was very upfront it's certainly at first with her opposition to the war last year, where she was briefing the president that Iran was not a threat, despite his words that he didn't care what she said. But I thought she was always somewhat of a voice of reason, especially with regards to Iran. And I feel the same way about Joe Kent as well. I really do. And I see we now have two people in the administration that were voices of reason now, that will no longer be in these positions to, I guess, I'd say to hopefully sway President Trump from doing some things that he probably shouldn't be doing. But that seems to be where we stand with this right now. It says here that the news broke within minutes of the president saying he now plans to remain in the White House this weekend rather than his New Jersey golf course, fueling speculation that he's poised now to resume attacks on the Islamic Republic of Iran. Well, we'll see about that, folks. I don't know if he'll do it over Memorial Day weekend, but I do believe he will do it very, very soon. I mean, it could happen, of course. I never say never on that. And I do know that it will happen. But very sad to hear this about Tulsi Gabbard and, of course, her husband. And, of course, we pray for his wellness and hopefully he recovers from this ailment. It's very horrible when you hear things like such. One of the other biggest stories today, fresh out of Fox Business, is that Kevin Warsh has now been sworn in as the new chair of the Federal Reserve by Justice Clarence Thomas, hopefully giving us some new guidance and optimism in monetary policy. And I got to tell you, this guy gives you the real, when I hear him speak, he speaks very well. He understands he's in a very, very crucial situation at a very, very kind of topsy-turvy time in our economy, certainly, as Warsh now steps into the top role at the nation's central bank at a pivotal time, with inflation rising due to energy price shocks caused by the war in Iran, and markets viewing the prospect of interest rate cuts as increasingly unlikely in the near term. I want to play you a little bit of Warsh's speech from this morning, which I thought was very well handled. I thought he spoke with great dignity. And I got to tell you, I hope he has a relationship with President Trump like President Reagan had with Paul Volcker, Alan Greenspan, when they gave us one of the biggest economy booms we had seen in quite some time. I don't think we've seen anything like it since, certainly not in modern times. When you raise domestic national product by 25%, when you bring unemployment down, when you bring the interest rates coming down, when you expand the medium take-home pay by $20,000 to $50,000 for the middle class, you're talking about a booming economy. Not to mention millions of jobs in the process. Reagan went to school, by the way, for economics, and despite what people may think about Ronald Reagan, he himself decided he was going to try his own policies. He was going to work with Volcker and Greenspan and try to get things moving. And he gave us one of the best economies, again, we've seen in quite some time. It was so good that even in the 1990s, the effects of that economy boom were still being felt in the Clinton administration, if you can believe that. And here we are today in a completely different spot, but that doesn't mean we can't reverse course, folks. Never say never. Never say never. Anyways, here is Kevin Warsh during his ceremony speech this morning. Take a listen.
I intend to fill the role of chairman with energy and purpose, just the way Chairman Greenspan did, faithful to the mission and the very best traditions of the Fed. As you demonstrate, Mr. President, every day, energy and purpose are how big obstacles are overcome. Your greatest ambitions are for America, for what free people can achieve when they have the chance. And while I'm not naive about the challenges we face, I believe, Mr. President, these years can bring unmatched prosperity that will raise living standards for Americans from all walks of life. And the Fed has something to do with it. Our mandate at the Fed is to promote price stability and maximum employment. When we pursue those aims with wisdom and clarity, independence and resolve, inflation can be lower, growth stronger, real take-home pay higher, and America can be more prosperous. And no less important, America's place in the world more secure.
I like this speech. Again, it gives you a form of positivity. Things can proceed in a different direction, hopefully. We know that President Trump's relationship with Jerome Powell was not so great. Therefore, we had some issues going on. But again, I think it's got to be a working relationship. So in other words, you can't have an out-of-control Congress, out-of-control spending. You can't do these things. You've got to have some cuts in the government spending. That would be crucial right now. We haven't done that in quite some time. So I hope moving forward, something positive happens with this appointment. I hope Kevin Warsh is good at what he does. Again, getting inflation down, because we haven't seen that in quite some time, ladies and gentlemen. Even in 2025, we saw 3% inflation. This year, we're looking at 4.2%. So we need to stop inflation. We need to begin working on individual greatness. I like that idea. I hope we can grow the economy. I believe we can. Again, we're Americans, folks. We have the resiliency to do whatever we put our minds to. But we've got to get the government out of our way when we do this, first and foremost. So I hope Warsh is a positive step in the right direction. I hope he's not the same old. It seems like he'll be looking, and he has looked at, ways of success with the Fed and ways in which the Fed has failed us. And hopefully he'll obviously grow in that position and do what's right by the American people. That's all we can hope for at this time, folks. That's all we can really hope for moving forward. So there's that. And again, a little bit of positivity for this Friday. We're already seeing some things beginning to turn around. For example, the bond market in particular, which again on Wednesday had me very, very worried. But in CNBC, it says the U.S. Treasury yields were mixed on Friday as Kevin Warsh took the reins at the Federal Reserve. The volatility followed a week of really borrowing costs rising to multi-year highs like we hadn't seen in quite some time, by the way. The 10-year yield on the U.S. Treasury note, the key benchmark for the United States government borrowing, fell more than 2 basis points to 4.56%. Now, on Wednesday, we saw something completely different. And it was so troubling, I said, I've got to talk to my audience about this because this is not good. This is heading in the wrong direction. So I'm hoping Warsh is someone that brings it in the other direction because we need this. The 30-year yield for the Treasury bond rose by 5 basis points on Tuesday and by 23 basis points over the past 7 trading days to 5.19%. This is the highest it's been since June of 2007. This is when yields rise. We see the prices of those bonds begin to fall. The existing bondholders begin to take losses. It's not as desirable to buy up those bonds. We don't want that. That makes things a bloodbath, if you will. Now, the long-term bond market has been completely blown off by the Fed's rate cuts. The more the Fed cuts, the higher the 30-year yield rose. This is now a spread of 156 basis points between the 30-year Treasury yield and the effective federal funds rate, which sits now at 3.63%. And when the Fed targets the bond market with its policy rates, it looks at this. Before the Fed started cutting rates in 2024, the 30-year yield was below the effective federal funds rate. We're nowhere near that right now. So we've got to look at where we are economically. Now, why is all this happening? Last week, for example, on Wednesday, the Treasury Department sold roughly $31 billion of the 30-year bonds at a yield of 5.046%. And now those buyers, certainly earlier this week, were very, very underwater with their investments. People don't want to see things change that drastically. So the question remains, I'm sure you're all asking yourselves, why is that happening? What does this mean for our economy? What's going on to cause this to happen? Now, the bond market is reacting for several different reasons. Number one, of course, the inflation that we're seeing. We are looking at the deficit right now. When Scott Bessent comes out and tells us we've got to borrow $2 trillion this year just to keep the government funded. So in other words, deficit spending. We look at long-term risks are rising faster than the Fed's ability to control them. I mean, the markets themselves think that the Fed is behind the curve right now. So that's another problem. They feel the Fed should have cut rates much sooner. So now they can't do it because we're nowhere near our 2% goal. We're looking at geopolitical shocks as well, pushing the yields up much higher. And the term premium has completely blown out. So all that being said, what does this mean for the economy? We're looking at a bond yield that is similar to the Great Recession almost 20 years ago, back in 2008. So what does this mean moving forward? We're still paying a high yield right now, even though it drops a little bit. We got borrowing costs now that will rise across the economy. So if we're looking at higher long-term yields, we're looking at higher mortgage rates. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Got just the article for you on that. Higher auto loans, credit card rates, corporate borrowing costs. All these things are climbing up. We could look at stock-based valuation pressure right now. And sectors like the tech stocks, all these things. Recession risks. Again, we're at a situation where we haven't seen in almost 20 years. Last time we saw this, we were in a Great Recession. It may be even worse than that right now. I mean, once you get over the 5% threshold, folks, you're looking in, murky waters. I'll just put it to you that way. Now, the Fed may be forced to reverse course here. If these yields continue to keep rising, the Fed may have to halt the rate cuts overall, which is what I believe will happen for some time. So I don't know what Warsh would do to combat that, but I think he'll have to sit down again with President Trump, Scott Bessent, and say, look, if we want to lower the rates, here's what needs to be done on your end. Then I'll do it on my end. But we cannot do it if we're not meeting exactly the monetary expectations that the Fed needs to see first. We're looking at things like the housing and credit markets will also be feeling the squeeze from this. As I just said to you, the higher mortgage rates, the slower the housing activity. Completely seeing this right now. And really and truly, a 1970s style environment is possible in this situation. We hope that isn't the case. But everything seems to be present in this. We're looking at persistent inflation going up right now, largely due to this war of aggression in the Middle East. We're looking at fiscal dominance right now. We're looking at geopolitical shocks. We're looking at rising term premiums. We're looking at the Fed credibility in question right now. But again, we can always hope that Kevin Warsh may be a way out of this. I don't know. I really can't tell you, folks. No, nobody can. But things have got to start changing both in the Beltway, and that is in the Capitol, the White House, and at the Federal Reserve. This has to change. We cannot continue on the path we're on right now with the out-of-control spending, the spending on wars, the foreign aid being dished out, the being over 100% in debt to GDP. This has got to stop, and it should have stopped a long, long time ago. We're not living within our means, and it's clearly showing, certainly with our bond market right now. And by the way, the other issue, too, when China, primarily, who's bought up lots of our debt, when Japan has also decided not to buy our debt along with China, that's another risk factor involved here, too. Who's going to buy up this debt? Especially if the dollar begins to weaken. Again, if the insolvency becomes a major issue, no one's going to buy up that debt. And then where does that leave us? Leaves us in a very, very big problem because then we default. And I pray to God that doesn't happen, but that looks like the path we seem to be on. Now, moving along on the Wall Street Journal, just to kind of reinforce what I've just spoken about, the mortgage rates this week have rose to the highest level since August. And again, that's more bad news for home shoppers doing what they usually do in the busiest time of the year, buy homes. The average rate for a 30-year fixed mortgage rose to 6.51% this week from 6.36% last week, is what Freddie Mac has said. So we're seeing those rates beginning to spike. Again, another indicator that things are not going well. Again, what happens in the bond market is going to affect interest rates and mortgage rates together. Now, we have higher mortgage rates and expensive home prices now that are keeping many would-be buyers off to the sidelines. And these rising costs in many places for home insurance, the property taxes, and what have you, have also kind of upset buyers as well. It's unaffordable to them. Now, we've talked about this on the program in the past, and when we think about, for example, millennials, Gen Zers, when they feel, listen, I've gone to school for 4 years, 6 years, 8 years. I should be getting my first job, and I'm getting passed over. I'm getting passed over for H-1B visa holders. I'm applying to 1,000 jobs in an engineering field. I went to school for this. It should be a good-paying job, and then all of a sudden, nothing comes back. In fact, I was reading about one engineer just graduated from college with a master's, applying to 1,000 jobs all over the country, by the way. Heard back from 2 of them. Was willing to relocate anywhere. Heard back from 2 of them. We have to have competition, of course. We should always have the best candidates to make their positions. No doubt about it. Just because you have a diploma doesn't mean you're guaranteed anything. I understand that. But the idea that you're now hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and you can't even get a job in your own field, what was the point of it? So when I told you in the past, only about 34% of people that have a college degree use that specific degree in their field in which they're currently in, that begs the question, do more people go to college? Is it meaningful? Should you even be doing that? Or can you do something else that is more beneficial to you where you're not going to be straddled with such amount of debt? And then how are you going to buy a new home when you're sitting on $200,000 of debt and you have no job to pay that off? What are you going to do then? Well, I'll tell you, you're not going to buy the house. Then you're going to be bitter about things. You're not going to feel that the American dream is for you, as do many Gen Zers right now. They don't feel that the American dream is viable to them or could be achieved. That's a pretty upsetting thing. You got to be honest. I mean, that's a pretty upsetting thing when young people feel they can't make it in this country. So when we have, for example, roughly 40 million illegal aliens in this country right now, again, thanks to Joseph Robinette Biden, Kamala Harris, and Alejandro Mayorkas, who opened up the floodgates on our southern border to everybody and their brother and sister in the entirety of the world, 170 different countries to come in. This creates a big problem. It creates a strain on housing because now you have to house these 40 million people, sometimes often their children, right? That's why Trump had the birthright citizenship case. We've got to understand where we sit with this. You're accommodating illegal aliens. You're accommodating expired visa holders, some 55 million. So you have almost 1 million people. I'm sorry, 100 million people. My math is a little off there, folks. I'm sorry. A little bit of a Biden moment today. When you have almost 100 million people, at least, that don't belong in this country, that are taking up housing, taking up parts of the supply of food or oil or electricity or jobs or whatever it may be, that has an effect on we, the American citizens. This should upset people. Absolutely. These people get in front of the line, in front of you, and you're just passed off. And then on top of it, again, Trump wants to bring in H-1B visa holders. Why would you do that when you already have 116,000 new engineers, for example, every single year to take up good paying jobs that should be given to Americans first and foremost? Now, if you have jobs that need to be filled and you cannot fill them, then of course you bring in more labor from outside. But why would you not look in America first? We know we have the talent here in the United States. I don't care what President Trump told Laura Ingraham. We do have the talent. And this upsets people. So it's a different time, folks. It's a very weird time when we see the way the economy is working for a lot of people, the opportunities. Again, I want opportunities. If people are given the opportunity to do well, they usually do very well. But when that opportunity is gone, you don't see anything. You don't see the ability to buy the house, to have the family, to be a provider or a protector. Those things upset people, by and large. And you're seeing that play out, and you're seeing the way the Gen Zers are voting. That's why they're voting for the Zoran Mumdummies of the world, the Katie Wilsons of the world, the Abigail Spanbergers of the world. I mean, you might get some voters' remorse, but this is why they're voting for them. Even though they're offering them crumbs, the crumbs are more than just sitting on the sidelines and getting absolutely nothing. So we've got to change the outlook of this economy. We have to create opportunities. That's all we need, opportunities. Give people opportunities, allow for growth, get government off your back, and usually the American people do just fine. That being said, the inflation needs to come down, and that needs to happen 5 years ago, 6 years ago. We need to revert course, folks, very, very quickly. So the rise in mortgage rates this year mark a reversal from the second half of 2025. That's another very big problem. This is when rates were declined after the Federal Reserve started easing on short-term interest rates. Mortgage rates then dipped below 6% in February, boosting expectations for the busy spring ahead. However, the fourth straight slow year of the housing market will challenge industries that rely on house sales, including the real estate brokerages. We're looking at mortgage lenders. We're looking at home buyers and future manufacturers, furniture manufacturers as well. And this frustration over the unaffordability of the housing has also spilled into political campaigns at the national level. We've got President Trump now pushing for Congress to now pass a bill aimed at lowering the housing costs. How do you pass a bill on lowering housing costs? It's basic supply and demand. Let the markets work itself out. When you get out of the way, or when you remove the people that shouldn't be here, that's first and foremost. Think about this. If you have a third of the people in this country of 340 million people that don't belong here, that's putting a 30% strain on those prices in that existing market. You're not going to pass a bill to get your way out. This has to come from within. This has to come from people that can build houses, have the ability to build houses, and not be straddled with things like lawsuits like we see in California, for example, with CEQA and other bills like that. This red tape to build houses is just simply not working. And now President Trump on a federal level may be able to remove some of them. That's fine if he wants to do that. But the idea, though, that this has to come from Congress, something tells me nothing's going to change as a result of that. As I digress, let's move on now to the other major issue we seem to be facing in our economy right now. And that is that Americans have been struggling for months with the high gas prices now, the persistent inflation that sits around 3.8% right now, and the record low consumer sentiment right now that seems to be hitting the economy. Now, this boast got some, the sentiment, I should say, kind of gave a boost during the tax refunds. That's now fading away. We're now hearing about retailers like Walmart or Lowe's, for example. They're now warning that the fuel costs driven by the Iranian war may be showing up in prices on products on their shelves. And that makes perfect sense. It costs more to get those goods to the store, to the retailer. that means the price on the shelf has got to rise because then they begin to lose profit. Now, of course, it's tough to predict exactly when, but the fact that they're talking about this right now, this tells me that they're seeing the effects, they're seeing the higher prices in the producer price index, which I've talked to you about in the past. Make no mistake about it. If it costs more to produce or it costs more to get your good to wherever it needs to go, to get it on that shelf, the retailer, the store owner, they've got to begin to rise their prices. And if they don't rise their prices, then it becomes a major, major issue as time goes on. So, where does this leave us now, folks? It leaves us with the war at hand. We've got to ask ourselves the question, how much longer can we do this for? How much longer do we have short-term pain for long-term gain? This is the question I want to ask you. To me, we need to get out of this 3 months ago, before it even happened. We should never be involved in this. But now we're talking about bombing again this week. And again, I do feel we'll be back in a bombing campaign very, very soon. Make no mistake about it. It's going to happen. And you'll see those prices go up. Because here's the problem. Most people aren't telling you. When you have all the supply coming in, just coming in last week to California, I believe it was the oil tanker from the Persian Gulf was sitting in Long Beach's port last week. So one of the last ships was waiting to dock to release all this oil. Makes sense. Now, no more oil is going to go to these refineries in California or wherever their destination may be. So the problem now is simply the fact that nothing else is coming in. And it takes 2 months to get from the Persian Gulf to the beaches of California. So I want you to think about that for a second. Nothing else is coming in, and now the reality sets in that supply is just gone. So we haven't even seen the supply itself being choked out yet. So that 56% increase in gas prices since the war began, that happened before the supply was choked out. Those fears that the supply is no longer going to be there is now starting to settle in. And as a result of that, ladies and gentlemen, those prices are going to continue to rise. Now, does that mean it'll be $150 per barrel? It could be. It could be $200. I don't know. We have to see what the supply and how the economy and the demand all react to the diminished supply. But when I hear the bigwigs talking about this tells me for sure those prices are going to start going up. We're going to see consumer price index beginning to rise, and it's going to begin to rise very, very soon. Because once that supply is gone, you can't deny that anymore. You might hear President, well, we're in negotiations, we're in talks. Great. I'm happy about that. I really am. I want the war to end. Just like most people listening to the program probably want it to end. But you have to understand something. Nothing is behind those ships that have already docked last week. Nothing else is coming in. And that's the biggest problem of all. So I wish I had better news on that front. Unfortunately, I do not. But that's a reality we have to all agree with. Nothing else is coming in those gas prices, especially in California, which are already exorbitantly high, are only going to continue to get higher, and again, all across the nation as well. I think the national average right now is $4.55 per gallon. I know it's dipped in a couple places a little bit, but I think it's still obviously significantly higher than where we were in early March. So it's going to rise. Expect it to rise. I told you, prepare ahead as best you can, because it's not going to come down anytime soon. Don't believe that, hey, once we get out of this war, even if that strait were open up tomorrow, that'd be great. But let's say even if it opened up tomorrow, the Iranians said, everyone that wants to pass, everyone, just come on in, go through it. We're not stopping you. Even if that were true, it's going to take 60 days at least to get those ships to where they are in California today. So we're talking about 2 months behind schedule. Those ships are not moving from A to B. That is a long time, folks. Long, long time. We may want to reconsider selling some of this oil to China moving forward. And just to reiterate where we stand with this war, I'm not going to go into any great detail with the war today. Not anything very, very new. But here was President Trump speaking just the other day at the White House. And again, I have to laugh a little bit. He has his way with his words. Okay, fine. But again, the same old, I feel like. Let's listen to clip 2.
I'm not doing this politically. I'm doing, look, everyone tells me it's unpopular, but I think it's very popular. When they hear that it's having to do with nuclear weapons, weapons that could take out Los Angeles, could take out major cities very quick. When they hear that, when they're explaining, I'll tell you what, when we explain it to people, I don't really have enough time to explain it to people. I'm too busy getting it done. When they understand, I think it's frankly very popular.
You'll have to excuse the background information. That would be the ballroom that we're all paying for being built right now. He doesn't have the time to explain it to everyone, but he's got to get it done. Well, what's been done? I played for you yesterday, Admiral Cooper. He had no idea what to say when he was asked, what have we achieved in this war? We haven't stopped any production of enriched uranium. Quite the contrary, they still hold it, and they're still continuing to hold on to it now. We certainly haven't opened up the Strait of Hormuz. We know that's closed. The Iranians have complete operational control of it. So where do we stand on all this, Mr. President? What is the goal? What is the outcome here? I say, well, Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. Good. They don't have one. So let's get the hell out of there. How about that? That's what I want to see. And I'm sure you do as well. Now, Marco Rubio was also talking about the war and, of course, a possible deal with the Iranians and what we should look for. And he reiterates a lot about what President Trump has just said. But let's take a listen to Secretary Rubio as well.
Those conversations that are ongoing, there's been some slight progress. I don't want to exaggerate it, but there's been a little bit of movement, and that's good. The fundamentals remain the same. Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. And to achieve that, we're going to have to address the issue of enrichment. We're going to have to address the issue of the highly enriched uranium. And then added to this, of course, is the issue of the Straits. Iran is trying to create a tolling system. It can't happen. If that were to happen in the Straits of Hormuz, it will happen in 5 other places around the world. Why would countries all over the world say, well, we want to do this too?
Well, that's amazing to me that he said this for a couple of reasons. Number one, they do this around the world. Look at the Suez Canal. They charge a toll to allow ships into the Red Sea from the Mediterranean and vice versa. They make about $10 billion a year on this, roughly. It's a lot of money. They like this. But they're controlling that waterway. Well, they do that in the Panama Canal, too, which I believe we have control of right now again, folks, don't we? Sure. We certainly don't want China to get a hold of it. But what I'm saying to you is there are waterways in which, in order to get through that channel, you have to pay. So it's not unheard of that the Iranians do this because it's their territorial waters. I know that's difficult for Marco Rubio to understand, even though he's a lawyer. He should understand this. From your shoreline, right where that water meets, 12 miles out is your water. That's the way it works. You control that water. That is not international water. That is, if it's American shore, it's American territorial. It's their water. Same thing in Iran. Same thing with Oman across the strait, which is only about 21 miles. So, ladies and gentlemen, Oman on one side, Iran on the other, they decide to come together and create a toll system in order to pass through the strait. They can do that. It's not illegal. It's not violating international law. I don't know how many times I have to say this, but they keep reiterating the same false claims. Hey, they're controlling the strait. I heard Byron Donalds. Yes, he's running for governor of Florida, by the way. By the way, I like Byron Donalds. I think he's a decent candidate. But he was totally wrong about the Strait of Hormuz. He's asked about what's taking place in the war. Well, they can't get a nuclear weapon. Yeah, we've heard this before. They can't get a nuclear weapon. We've heard this about 1 billion times so far. And I've said about 1 billion times they have a fatwa in place by the former Ayatollah that said we're not going to build a nuclear bomb. Pretty clear, folks, I would have to say. No evidence from the contrary, not from Tulsi Gabbard, not from our CIA, not from Joe Kent. I think it's their job, by the way, to understand what's taking place abroad. And if there are any threats here in the United States, then they could not point to one. Certainly not point to Iran building a nuclear bomb that would threaten the United States. So when Trump says, well, it could reach Los Angeles, first of all, they don't even have intercontinental ballistic missiles. And they don't even have the nuclear warhead to put on it. So, we're going through hypotheticals now. Could that happen? Sure. Is it happening right now? No, not even close. There's no evidence for it. So we changed the goalpost to, well, this attack could happen. And my God, they could hit us with a nuclear bomb in Los Angeles. Not going to happen. Just isn't going to happen, folks. And Rubio the same, and Byron Donalds the same. They're creating terrorism by controlling the Strait of Hormuz, threatening to attack ships. Yeah, they control that strait. What do you think would happen if a ship just drove through the Suez Canal, violated the tolling system? You don't think they would be stopped? You don't think that ship would be seized? Same thing with the Panama Canal. All these areas. Now, the Iranians have made it very clear. The countries of which would be Kuwait, the Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, that have been aiding and abetting the U.S. to use their land, their military bases, to attack Iran, will have to pay even more. And those ships from there don't even bother coming through right now. Now, their sentiments have changed since then, where they will allow people to come through, ships, if they pay the $2 million in the yuan or in the riel, and you'll coordinate with the Iranians, and they'll show you how to pass. They'll get you through. Ships can do this right now, by the way. It doesn't matter if you're a British ship, a French ship, a Russian ship. That's how they get through. That's how these things work. And the idea that this blockade is stopping anything, again, is completely fiction. It's really not. I was told the other day that at least, I think it was 56 ships had crossed through the Strait of Hormuz and were not stopped. And I don't believe so, because we simply weren't told anything about it. So I don't know if we have a blockade in name only as well as a ceasefire in name only with the Iranians, but this seems to be where we are right now in this war. And every day it goes on, the economy is going to get much, much worse, folks. So please don't tread lightly on that, because this is exactly where we seem to be finding ourselves. All right, let's move on, folks, to some market talk. Let's look at our stock numbers today, as this Friday is coming to a close. Very good week for the top marginal stocks here. Let's look at the Dow Jones first, jumping some 400 points today. Trading at $50,638.76 per share. Very, very good. Up 0.70% today. S&P 500 trading at $7,477.45 a share. Up almost 32 basis points. And then we got the NASDAQ trading at $26,350.94 a share. Up just about 60 points today. And what we're seeing with the top performing stocks here, Wall Street closing out on a high note. We've got the Dow Jones hitting multiple all-time highs, including today's intraday record, by the way, really benefiting from its rotation to blue chip, defensive contracts, industrial names, you name it. Then we look at the NASDAQ with its seventh gain in 8 weeks due to the tech rebounding right now. We're seeing oil prices easing just a little bit today, again, because of the optimism regarding the war in Iran, which, again, I've told you before, is nothing more than political jargon, but it seems to be working for President Trump right now, and it's showing in these top marginal stocks. Then we look at the S&P 500, again, driven by the strong Q1 earnings and the easing of the Treasury yields today that we're seeing from earlier in this week. Now, while looking good, we've got to understand that Wall Street is not Main Street in many regards. And it's being very heavily propped up by the AI sectors. And as I told you before, I would expect that bubble to burst in 2026. So you can take that to the bank and cash it with you. I'm very confident about all of that. That doesn't mean we can't be happy that things are in the green. It's much better than being in the red. But again, everything that goes up must come down, ladies and gentlemen. Let's look at our tech stocks. Bitcoin trading at $68,450 right now, up 2.15% today. We got Amazon, Mr. Jeff Bezos, who, by the way, came out this week and said that everyone in the lower 50% earnings shouldn't be paying any income tax. I agree with him. I don't think anybody should. Amazon now is trading at $182.35 a share, up 0.85% today. Tesla trading at $178.90, down 1.25%. We got Apple trading at $194.12 a share, up 0.42%. Nvidia, the big one, trading at $1,045.50 a share, up 3.1% today. Very good. SoFi Technologies, a new one I threw in there today, trading at $7.85. Trading just a little bit lower today, 0.38%. Advanced Micro Devices, trading at $162.40 a share, up 1.75%. Then we look at PayPal, another new one I threw in there just to have some fun with you. PayPal's trading at $64.22 a share, down almost a percentage point today. Microsoft up 0.68% at $428.55 a share. Then we go to Meta, good old Mark Zuckerberg. Meta's trading at $498.10 a share. I guess they got their advertisers back. Trading at 1.22% higher today than yesterday's close. Very good. Then we look at Google Alphabet, trading at $176.45 a share. Just growing under 1 percentage point from yesterday's close. Then we got Dell Technologies trading at $142.30 a share, down 0.55%. Micron Technology trading at $123.15 a share, up 2.05%. And Broadcom, just to close things off, trading at $1,485.20 a share, up 1.88%. Again, the tech stocks are showing some broad strength today, particularly with the semiconductor leaders like NVIDIA and Micron. And who's the other one? Advanced Micron Devices as well. Again, they're posting some strong gains. Again, optimism around the AI demand is still there. We got Bitcoin, which is really rallying around the 68,000 marker. We're seeing a little bit of a boost in the sentiment into the crypto space. We got Tesla and PayPal among some of the few laggards this week, facing some mild profit taking. Overall, we're looking at the NASDAQ tech sector is trading much, much higher and supported by the upbeat earnings and outlooks and investor confidence in a lot of these growth names. So again, I told you before, the AI sector, it's going to be growing, make no mistake about it, because again, the government is bullish on it. We had, who do we see go to Beijing with President Trump last week? We saw Jensen Huang and we saw Elon Musk, among others. The big tech guys, the big tech bros are headed out there. And so they want something from China, again, to boost up their companies. That's why, again, you're seeing the sentiment in a lot of these companies looking pretty good right now. But again, I ask you, where's the investment going? Where's the companies being built? What are they producing right now? A lot of it's still just in production right now. So I'm interested to see exactly what they produce and when they will produce it. Let's look at the precious metals now. We have gold trading at $4,508.50, down 0.74% today. Silver, $75.50 a share, down 1.38%. Palladium trading at a flat $1,920, down almost 2.5% today. And palladium's trading at $1,337, down 2.76% today. So, we're looking at things like gold, for example, right? Gold set for a weekly loss as the oil-driven inflation fears boost the rate hikes, and that's why we're seeing that take place. Again, we're seeing a lot of people pulling out of the precious metals market and investing in the tech stocks because they feel it's a much better return right now. So that's why you're seeing a lot of that. Silver, same thing. Silver is also used for industrials. It's used in military capabilities. So again, you're seeing some supply issues with that. But I'm still bullish on that. I really am. I told you before, if gold stays above that $4,200 threshold, I think you'll see that continue to grow from here on out. We saw it hit over 5,000 recently. It's kind of in a little bit of a limbo right now, but I do think it will continue to grow. That being said, I never tell you any financial advice or tell you what to invest in. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing right now. So again, before you invest, talk to a financial planner, stockbroker. Don't just take Mark Andre's word. Just take my advice, though. Okay? Just listen to my advice and then do your own research. Okay? Okay, good. And finally, today, let's go over our oil stock. And let's take a look at West Texas Intermediate right now, trading at $96.94 per barrel. It's up 0.61% right now. Brent crude trading at $104.02 today. It's up 1.4%. Very good. Again, they're hovering always over that $100 mark usually. Dubai crude trading at $75.23. Yep. Murbain crude trading at $76.33. That's because that oil's not going anywhere. Out of the UAE, and down 0.18% today. Then we look at Western Canadian Select trading at $58.36 per barrel today, up 0.27%. And Urals crude is trading at $96.15 per barrel today. Yep. So again, why are we seeing this, you ask? Middle East supply risk still dominates the sentiment around oil right now. We're just getting multiple sources of the ongoing tension. Again, the Strait of Hormuz disruptions, the attack on ships, all these things are what's keeping these stocks up right now. So, how do we get through this, folks? Well, the war needs to end. That's what really needs to happen. I think you'll see things ease off as time goes on. But again, the supply chain is going to be down for a while. We're seeing things like OPEC. Their supply is diminishing as well. So therefore, you see the prices of these futures beginning to rise right now. And again, they're all elevated from where they were 2 months ago. So that's why that's taking place. Let's move on to this article, though. I want to get into this because we ran out of time yesterday, unfortunately. So this is an article out of The Hill. And that's kind of stirring things up right now. And it says here, the Trump administration is now set to indict Raúl Castro, the former Cuban president. And the Justice Department has made this move that coincides with the island's Independence Day and a threat from President Trump to invade the island, which has been taunted as of late. And it says here that the Justice Department plans to indict Castro. Well, Reuters reported that an indictment has already been returned. Prosecutors in the Southern District of Florida have a press conference slated for Wednesday afternoon. I believe this already took place. And Todd Blanche, the acting attorney general, said that they would hold in conjunction with a ceremony to honor the victims of the Brothers to the Rescue. So this was, for those of you that don't know, these were the 4 men that were killed in 1996 when their planes searching for those potentially seeking to leave the island were shot down by the Cuban military, which at the time was led by Castro. This is when he was the defense minister of the island. His brother was obviously the leader. Now, Castro, who's now 94, he'll be 95, I believe, very, very soon. I think it's within the next 2 weeks. Stepped down as president in 2018, but is still considered by the United States to still be the effective leader of the country. So, are we in the business now of just simply arresting leaders of states that we don't like? In other words, the Maduro effect. Are we just going to simply go into a country we don't like what the leader's doing and simply arrest them in the middle of the night? A 95-year-old? Is this where we are now? In a country that's never attacked the United States? Now, I want to, I want to make something very clear. These Brothers to the Rescue, let's understand who they were and what this situation was all about. They have strong ties in Miami, working for regime change inside of Cuba, committing terror attacks for decades, by the way. And a lot of people have said that they have CIA guidance. One of their leaders, this Jorge Mascanosca, I believe is how he says his name, he was a CIA op as well. What they do is they do things like dropping leaflets when flying over, encouraging regime change through acts of violence and rebellion to the country. And when this took place in 1996, though, when these two planes were flying over, again, they weren't armed, but nonetheless, they were flying over Cuban airspace. Even then, the Clinton administration State Department, in an email the day before, described the flight as a provocation over Cuban airspace, as, again, this group in the past had bombed airplanes, ships, hotels, shooting at beachgoers, you name it. But I want to put this into perspective for we, the American people. How would the United States act if, for example, a Cuban plane was to fly over the United States, dropping leaflets in, let's say, Miami, talking about doing violent protests, or shooting people on Miami beaches, or bombing planes and boats in the area? How would we respond if planes from this country were coming into our airspace? I don't think it would stand for a second. I don't think it would at all. And, I say this to you because, again, this is 30 years ago. Would we not defend our airspace if planes that were not allowed in the airspace to come into the airspace? Of course we wouldn't. I mean, to me, to have to say this to you, I think is ridiculous. But this is what they're saying. So what's the charge? They were protecting their airspace and they shot down 2 planes and killed 4 people, excuse me. I mean, again, what jurisdiction do they have over the Cubans to not protect their airspace? I don't understand the charge here. I really don't understand this. And even the Clinton administration seems to agree that, this is a provocation. They could attack you. Yet this continued to happen anyways. And by the way, I'm not saying living in Cuba is a paradise. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying it's great to live under communism. And it also doesn't help that we have embargoes and sanctions to the teeth on them. That certainly doesn't help out at all in preventing oil from entering the country. But this indictment process, what are we doing with a 95-year-old? What are we going to do with him? Are we going to go through a proper extradition process as well? Doesn't seem like that. So what are we going to do? Go in the middle of the night and take this man and bring him back to the United States for defending his country's airspace? Again, makes no sense. Why is this what we're focused on right now? Let's focus on things like the economy, please. Nobody gives a damn what is taking place with Castro 30 years ago. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And so only time will tell if we go do one of these stealth attacks again and take this man in the middle of the night and bring him to the United States, just like we did with Maduro, again, which I believe is illegal. We did not follow extradition laws or international laws as well, folks. And again, I tell it to you as clearly as I can, as truthfully as I can. Just doing this to world leaders is simply not the way international law works. It doesn't work out that way. You have to have extradition with those countries, and there's a process the DOJ and the State Department have to go through. You can't just put out a lawsuit against the guy and expect to, go and take him in the middle of the night again. Ridiculous. Really it is. And by the way, China right now, too, has responded, not to this indictment, but to the threats by the United States. And the Chinese Foreign Ministry responded on Tuesday to Cuban figurehead President Miguel Diaz-Canel, predicting a bloodbath in the event of American action against the communist regime by offering its support now to Cuba and demanding an end to American sanctions. So what do we think took place when Trump went last week to China? I wonder if they talked a little bit about Cuba here and there. But this is the reality, folks. We're seeing now the foes of the United States, I would say, are taking sides with other factions that are up at odds against the United States. In this case, Cuba. And now what do we get? We're going to see what Chinese ships pulling up to Cuba now to protect them? God only knows, but this is where we find ourselves now in 2026. Let's stop with this. Cuba is not a problem for us. They've not attacked us. They're not going to attack us. They don't pose any geopolitical threat to us. Let's focus on what's taking place inside the U.S. And yes, of course, we secure our borders. Absolutely. I know they're only 90 miles away. But what does that mean that they would support them? How are they going to support them? With arms? With troops? God knows they have enough of them in China. With a blockade around the island? I don't know. But we're starting to, poke the bear a little bit here. We know that China holds lots of the cards over us, certainly economically. In terms of ballistic missiles, absolutely. They have hypersonic missiles. We don't have any that work, at least not yet. So we're just at odds now with China and what they want. Doesn't need to be that way, folks. Doesn't need to be that way. And by the way, I do want to say this to you, since we're talking about, for example, what took place with President Trump just recently about that whole that slush fund that he's now put out. I believe it's called, what is it called? I can't remember the name of it. The anti-weaponization fund now that's what it's called. This is written by Judge Andrew Napolitano, who, I admire his work greatly, and I do believe he always reflects the Constitution and morals ahead of anything else. And that's why I like this article too. And he says during the last year of his first term in office, President Trump's tax returns were stolen alongside of 425,000 others by the IRS employee who then leaked President Trump's tax returns to media outlets. That did happen. Now, the act of stealing and leaking were, of course, criminal. And the now former IRS employee who pleaded guilty to theft of government documents served nearly 4 years in federal prison. But that hasn't stopped President Trump from moving forward now to assisting Todd Blanche to create this, I guess you'd call it a slush fund. I don't know what else I'd call this. This is the anti-weaponization fund now that wants to allocate roughly $1.8 billion. Again, he's having his acting attorney general, who desperately wants to be attorney general, by the way, to create this fund that would compensate January 6th attackers. You can call them attackers, you can call them protesters. Some obviously were held without real charge, just simply for being there that day, rotting away in solitary confinement. Again, highlighting the growing rift between the GOP and, of course, the White House. But I think this is indicating a little bit of a standoff between the Senate Republicans, who just derailed a massive immigration enforcement bill and left town early until June now, really at unease, because what's taking place with this anti-weaponization fund is that they've created a government-sponsored program. So this has to be done through Congress because you're taking money. No $1.8 billion has been allocated for the Justice Department to compensate President Trump's allies. So, again, I don't know what he expects to get from this. Loyalty? I don't know. Does he expect to get some money from this as well? I don't know. But I do know this didn't sit well with many of the Senate Republicans now. And unease about the so-called anti-weaponization fund reached a fever pitch during a Thursday morning meeting with Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, the DOJ's top lawyer, was summoned to the Capitol to assuage lawmakers' concerns with the Democrats have characterized now as a slush fund, which I believe it is too, by the way. There's no other way to say it to you. What else is it? Which especially could dole out money to individuals involved in the insurrection, which I don't believe it was an insurrection at all, on January 6, 2021. So let me ask you this. Let's put this into a greater perspective. Trump could have sued the IRS when he wasn't in office, certainly, and received compensation for that. So can these people too, by the way, I'm sure. For Trump's IRS forms. But now, how can Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, who is Trump's former criminal defense lawyer, permeate the DOJ he supervises to adverse to the president now? I mean, it's like you're the plaintiff and you're the defendant at the same time, it seems. I don't understand this position we're taking here. I would imagine that this is illegal to do this, first of all, and of course to enrich yourself. So I don't see the gain in any of this, first of all. And really, it's going to be a constitutional issue, I would imagine. If a judge sees this, I think it'll get shot down. I don't think this will go through Congress because, again, they have to allocate this money. Where else are they going to get this money from? Now, Judge Napolitano clearly states the Constitution's appropriations clause requires that no money shall be drawn from the Treasury except that which has been appropriated by the Congress and spent as Congress has directed. So we're circumventing Congress yet again, ladies and gentlemen. Same thing we did with the tariffs, which, again, I opposed President Trump doing on his own. And the scheme concocted by President Trump and his own IRS now, and his own DOJ, have never presented any of these ideas for this fund to Congress, nor did Congress appropriate these funds for this purpose. So the scheme, I would imagine, will get shot down. If it goes through a court, absolutely. But this, again, I don't understand why we do these things. I really don't. I don't understand these positions that we're taking, that we're now going to have taxpayer dollars being funded for this slush fund, of which we don't know who's going to be involved in or what the parameters would be to achieve this. or pay out the money to. I imagine this will get shot down, folks. I don't see it really going anywhere. Certainly once Congress meets, I think they would adjourn to say, yeah, we're not going to be doing this. I don't see it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you as always for being here. Another show in the books, another week down. Thank you as always for sharing the show. Make sure you're staying prepped as always. Enjoy the rest of your day. I hope everyone has a blessed Memorial Day weekend. I'll see you back here on Monday for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good, stay busy. God bless.